Before we begin, I invite you to gently close your ears and focus on what remains when all external sounds fade away. It's like sitting in a quiet room, and after a while, you notice a subtle ringing or hum beneath the silence. If you listen closely, you'll start to experience this soft, constant presence, something that feels like the very fabric of reality itself. In quantum physics, it's said that everything is connected at the most fundamental level, and that everything we see is just a manifestation of deeper, unseen energy. What you are hearing, or rather feeling, is that same energy, that same field of potential. This subtle ringing is what we call the sound of silence. It's not just an abstract concept or some external force. It's the very essence of you. Everything we discuss in this session and the ones to come will be about this sound of silence. It is not something separate or different from you. It is you. This exploration is about realizing that the sound of silence is your own inner being, your most fundamental nature, the stillness from which all life arises. You are that, the very presence behind everything. Before beginning the discussion, Santa kindly requested that everyone take a moment of silence. This brief pause was not just for relaxation, but to set the tone for the kind of awareness that he wanted to cultivate in the group. As the silence enveloped the room, it became clear that what he was about to speak of required full attention, an openness to understanding the deeper dimensions of life, not just through intellectual processing, but through deep inner awareness. Now, let's reflect on something simple but profound, Santa began. We all live in a world full of distractions and noise. The world around us constantly bombards us with sounds, images, and thoughts. Yet, do we ever stop and ask ourselves what we are truly seeing and hearing? More importantly, do we ever question why we are seeing and hearing only what we want to? The truth is, all of us are surrounded by the same world, but we perceive it differently because our minds have filters. We see only what we are inclined to see and hear only what we expect to hear. To make his point clearer, Santa invited everyone to imagine a person from a small, peaceful village who suddenly moves to a large, bustling city. The noise, the hustle, the lights, everything would be overwhelming to this newcomer. They would find it difficult to sleep, feel disturbed by the constant hum of life. But to the city dwellers, this noise is part of their reality. They no longer even notice it. It's as if the noise ceases to exist for them. This, Santa pointed out, is the nature of perception. It is not the world around us that causes us discomfort. It is how we choose to engage with it, how we are conditioned to respond to it. You might think, how could anyone get used to the constant noise of the city? But the truth is, we do. When we get accustomed to something, it fades into the background of our awareness. The same thing happens with our thoughts and emotions. We grow accustomed to certain ways of thinking, and they become so habitual that we no longer notice them, Santa continued. He explained that this filter, which distorts our perception of reality, is the root cause of much of our suffering. We look at the world through these filters, and because of them, we see things not as they are, but as we want them to be. This is why, Santa explained, people are often so unhappy, because they see the world in a limited, distorted way. They don't realize that their suffering comes not from the world itself, but from their perception of it. To make his point more relatable, Santa invited everyone to imagine being in a situation where they were deeply troubled. Perhaps there was something in their life that wasn't going as planned. Now ask yourself, he said, what is the real cause of your distress? Is it the situation itself, or the way you perceive it? If you change how you look at things, might you find that your suffering diminishes or even vanishes? Let me explain something crucial, Santa went on. The goal of spirituality is not to be free from worry, anxiety, or suffering. The goal is not simply to find peace and calmness in life, because if we seek that as the ultimate aim, we are only chasing after a fleeting state. Real spirituality is about seeing clearly. It is about realizing that there is no true bondage. You are not bound by your circumstances, your thoughts, or your past. These are just illusions, filters through which you have been taught to view yourself and the world around you. Santa paused to allow the words to sink in. This may sound difficult to grasp, but let me explain it more simply. The essence of spirituality is not about achieving freedom. It's about realizing that you were never truly bound. Freedom is not something to be attained, but something to be recognized. You are already free. All the chains you feel are self-imposed. All the burdens you carry are mental constructs. At this point, Santa asked the group to reflect on the concept of freedom. "What does freedom mean to you?" he asked. Most people think of freedom as the absence of something, freedom from worry, from fear, from responsibility. But true freedom is not about removing something from your life. It is about understanding that you do not need anything to be whole. Everything you seek outside of yourself, peace, love, fulfillment, is already within you. The only thing preventing you from realizing this is your own misunderstanding of who you truly are. Santa continued, elaborating on the idea that understanding one's true nature is the key to ending suffering. He used a simple metaphor to illustrate this. "Imagine holding a hot coal in your hand," he said. "The moment you release it, the pain stops, but while you are holding on to it, you are in agony. The coal doesn't cause the pain. The act of holding on to it does. This is how we experience suffering in life. We hold on to beliefs, ideas, and attachments that cause us pain, but when we let go of these attachments, the pain ceases." The group was silent, pondering this analogy. Santa continued, "When you let go of the idea that you are bound, when you stop clinging to the false belief that you are incomplete or lacking, the suffering ends. The chains that tie you are illusions of the mind, and once you realize this, they fall away. This is true liberation." He then shared that the key to this realization is not through external practices, but through an internal shift in understanding. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to achieve anything. You simply need to recognize who you truly are. And once you understand this, you will see that nothing in the world can bind you. Nothing in the external world can take away your peace, your joy, or your freedom, because these things have always been within you. Santa spoke with warmth and conviction, making it clear that the journey of spiritual understanding was not about achieving some grand external goal. It was about peeling away layers of misunderstanding and coming to a place where one could simply be. "The truth is," he said, "the only thing standing between you and your freedom is your misunderstanding of who you are. Once you see the truth about yourself, everything changes. You stop struggling, you stop fighting, and you simply are." He smiled gently and added, "This process doesn't happen overnight, of course. It takes time, patience, and practice. But the most important thing is to start by asking yourself the right question. Who am I? Everything else follows from there." Santa then introduced an interesting story to illustrate the nature of human perception. Consider the example of a monkey looking at itself in the mirror. The monkey sees its reflection and believes that it is another monkey, trying to interact with it, perhaps even fighting with it. In the same way, we often mistake our own thoughts, emotions, and identities as something external, something we have to fight or contend with. The difference between us and the monkey is that we have the ability to understand that the reflection in the mirror is simply us. Once we realize this, the conflict disappears. He continued to elaborate on the nature of self-awareness and understanding. Once you begin to see clearly, you will stop fighting with yourself. You will no longer be deceived by the illusions of the mind. You will realize that the peace you seek is already inside you, waiting to be discovered. And the more you look within, the more you will find that there is nothing to fear, nothing to fight against. You are already whole. At this point, Santa addressed the importance of cultivating a peaceful mind. True spirituality is about creating space in your mind so that you can see clearly. You need to quiet the noise of your thoughts in order to hear the truth. This is why spiritual practices such as meditation, prayer, and contemplation are so important. They help you develop a peaceful mind, a mind that is not constantly distracted by external stimuli or internal chatter. Santa also mentioned that many people get caught in the pursuit of peace, thinking that the goal of spirituality is simply to find a quiet mind. But this is not the ultimate goal, he said. The ultimate goal is to understand the nature of the mind, to realize that you are not your thoughts, your emotions, or your circumstances. You are the awareness behind them. Once you see this, you will no longer be attached to the fleeting states of the mind. True freedom, he concluded, is not freedom from things. It is freedom from the belief that you need anything outside of yourself. It is the recognition that you are already whole, already free. And when you realize this, everything else falls into place. You no longer need to strive for peace, happiness, or fulfillment, because you already possess them. Santa's teachings, profound and simple, left everyone in the room deeply moved. They realized that the path to liberation was not through struggle but through understanding, and in that understanding they would discover the freedom that had always been theirs.